Hello, and welcome to the Coach Right podcast, where we explore how to turn coaching expertise into published pages. I'm your host, Helen O'Neill, Portfolio Career Specialist, accredited Future of Work coach, author and creator of Coach Right 90, the writing programme specifically designed for coaches. You can get the episode show notes and your free guide to publishing options at coachright.co.uk. It's time for the next chapter. Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Coach Right podcast. Helen here, and I'm recording on Saturday the 1st of November 2025. My guest today is Colin Tapscott, leadership coach and author of Everyday Alchemy. We recorded the interview the day after Colin's book launch, and he shares all about that, where ideas come from and how he wove true and fictional stories together to bring his message to life. In personal news, progress on the Resilience book is steady. I have finished drafting the 3rd section and hit the 40k mark. That means I've got one more section to go, and then it's time for editing. We talked about editing in the last Coach Right 90 masterclass, exploring the different stages, where to focus, where to pull in professionals, and how to do all of that in a cost-effective way. The thing I always remind people, particularly when they're writing their first book, is to remember the most important stage of editing. The thing you do as soon as you've written the end, and that's celebrate. Writing a book is a massive achievement. Lots of people say they want to do it, not many actually do. And it's all too easy to skip straight from the first draft stage to the editing stage without acknowledging the milestone. Have a cake, go to a show, raise a glass or a mug, but mark the moment. If you're someone that's got write a book on your 2026 list of goals and want to find out a bit more about Coach Right 90, I'm running a couple of free workshops at midday on Wednesday the 3rd of December and 6 p.m. on Thursday the 4th of December. That's UK time. Spaces for these are limited and you do need to be able to attend live. Last time all the spots went, so if you want to come along, go to coachright.co.uk/workshop. As someone who identifies as a lifelong learner, it won't surprise you to hear that I've attended a few workshops myself over the past few weeks. The Alliance of Independent Authors hosted their annual digital conference, Self-PubCon, which was packed with useful sessions. The one that stood out for me was Reedsy's Ricardo Fayette. Now, you've probably heard Reedsy mentioned a couple of times on the podcast before. It's a marketplace for author services, which connects authors with reputable freelancers. There's also a wealth of information on their website. Ricardo is one of the founders. He's a marketing expert and an author himself, and he's well and truly tapped into the way AI is changing book discoverability. You've probably noticed that when you search for something on the internet now, you get an AI summary of findings at the top of the page. What you probably haven't, or at least I hadn't, thought about is what that means for how we market our books. Because AI search works differently from traditional search. Now, I'm going to oversimplify this, but before, search basically worked on keywords. Search engine optimization, or SEO, is all about those engines finding those keywords, indexing the information on your website, for example, and then ranking that in terms of relevance. So for your book, you want, for example, the title of your book to be relevant to that search and the subtitle. You want keywords in the blurb and you want reviews to help that ranking. None of that has changed. It's all still really important. And now we need to think about generative engine search too, because being on page 1 of the results is now lower than being in that little summary box at the top of the page. And I don't know about you, but I read that first and sometimes I don't go any further. AI-powered search is less about keywords and more about sentiment. They look for long form and the meaning behind the content. They look for credible sources for that information. That means as a user, you can expect far better search results that are increasingly personalised. And as someone running a business, be that coaching or authorship or both, you'll want to start thinking about how your online credibility and presence shows up. Blogs are a great way to do this, leveraging platforms such as Goodreads or YouTube, and it's early days, so there's nothing to fret over, while at the same time we have an opportunity to be some of the early adopters, and I don't like missing opportunities. I still wonder what AI search will make of all the people who are copying and pasting AI-generated content all over the shop, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. And if that doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what will. The other workshop I attended this week was very different, but equally important. It was the third in a series being run by the EMCC on Build Your Business. My coaching practice is around 18 months old and has grown steadily during that time. But I wanted to take some time to make sure that the business was built on really solid foundations. And the session on all things legal and financial helped me do just that. With any business, there are lots of mandatory things that are really important, but not necessarily that easy to navigate. I feel relatively fortunate in that I've worked with budgets and financials as well as legal and contracts over the years, so I did have a decent understanding when I started, but I really wanted to make sure that I was getting all the details right. And while coaching is an unregulated industry, legal adherence is obviously mandatory, and ethical processes are important to me as a practitioner and to my clients. I want them to know that the information they share with me is safe, both the hard data and the experiences they share. This is why I don't talk about my client outcomes on social media, for example. They were shared with me in a confidential space. They're not my stories to tell. It's also why I'm registered with the ICO and have a proper record retention policy. It's not particularly glamorous, but it's really important. As I edge towards year 2, I'm considering how I can automate, scale, and potentially outsource some of the back office tasks in the business. So reviewing the robustness of the mechanisms first has been incredibly useful. And of course, outside of those mandatory things, different coaches will make different choices about business setup. And they'll choose the route that works for them, particularly if, like me, it's part of a portfolio career. We're all different in how we write too, the topics we choose, the journey we take the reader on, and how we articulate what we want to say. Finding your author voice is one of the delights of writing your first book. It always makes me smile when people say it sounds like me when they read mine. And that's the topic of this week's blog, How to Find Your Voice, which you can read at coachwrite.co.uk/blog. Right, that's enough from me. It's time for the next chapter. Welcome to the Coach Write podcast. My guest today is Colin Tapscott. Colin is an EMCC accredited senior practitioner coach who established Everyday Leader, a coaching and training organisation in 2017. Prior to this, he was head teacher for 17 years, leading large primary schools. His purpose is to empower people. His training, coaching, podcasts and books all help him do that. He's the host of the Leadership Lounge podcast and has just published his second book, Everyday Alchemy, Transforming Trash into Treasure. Welcome to the show, Colin.
Well, thank you, Helen. It's lovely to join you.
Thank you for coming. So tell us about you, your coaching practice and your path to publication.
Well, yeah, as you heard, I kind of run Everyday Leader. We've been doing that for 8 years now. Everyday Leader is all around kind of developing personal leadership, kind of that moral, integral part of leadership. That's where we started out from. I think, for me, it's been about making sure leadership is rooted in that. I come across too often kind of leadership that isn't. And so it's just encouraging those people who really want to be rooted in that and working with them. So started off around leadership, developing personal leadership, and that's kind of widened as I've worked with leaders. They've said, can you actually come and do some coaching with some of our team as well, because they've seen the benefit. And at the root of what I try and do is we start off really helping people understand their kind of purpose, their values and their strengths, so they really understand themselves. And then quite often clients will come with an issue like, for example, I'm finding it really hard to hold a challenging conversation, and we'll look at methods to help them with that, but we'll also look at what sits underneath the storyline they're telling themselves. So yeah, at the heart of my coaching, it's really about that self-awareness, that self-understanding, so people can kind of lead from that position, knowing themselves better. And then as part of that, there's been a particular side development around anxiety. A lot of leaders and I work a lot with education. And so a lot of people with anxiety, just helping them work out how they manage that in the moment and reduce that. And again, kind of understand themselves and the best way to work for themselves to manage that anxiety as well. So that's my kind of coaching practice. For me, I'm been married for 34 years, have 3 adult children. I'm now a granddad, and we have three dogs at home, 2 Labradors and a young Spaniel, so plenty to kind of keep me busy as well. So yeah, that's me.
So lots of exercise.
Well, try to. Used to do. I have been doing a bit of running, but I'm just recovering from an injury with physio. So I hope to get back into the running soon. But yeah, certainly the Labradors and the Spaniels still keep me busy.
And I believe that your most recent title, as we're recording this, was launched yesterday. So tell us a bit more about your book.
Yeah. So my second book, Everyday Alchemy. It's kind of been shaped really by my work with clients. So it's all about transforming moments that you might seem as trashy and into treasure. And I had a lot of clients who were really kind of had this binary thinking around pass fail. I wasn't very good at that. I kind of messed up that conversation. I failed. And of course, clients and everyday people who go through a series of that, I failed, they then start to call themselves a failure because there's almost that decision tree diagram where they've just gone down that one side of fail, fail, fail. And I just recognized this in a number of clients and the work that I was doing with them. I thought, actually, this could be really helpful. That little spark of there's some work here that I'm doing that could go beyond my clients. And so it was helping them transform from being binary to having this kind of growth way of thinking. And again, work that I'd done was, well, what do you do in the moment, but also what do you do afterwards? So some of the principles of this book are in the moment to pause, to reflect, and then respond rather than just react. Because when we react, of course, the situation can control us rather than us control the situation. When we take moments to pause and reflect and then respond, we're kind of refocusing our locus of control, finding that point of control that we have. So it's helping people look at that in the moment, but then afterwards to kind of revisit it and review it, to re-understand it, think about things that aren't just for themselves, but actually what else was going on in that moment, so that they get into that habit of realizing in any one moment it isn't all about us, but actually there are other factors that come into play, and then just think, well, what's within my control? What was about me? What sort of things can I change for the future? And then that's when the transformation happens, that they don't just see moments as pass fail, but actually this is a moment of learning and a moment of growth, and it takes all the pressure off them and they begin to see things longitudinally. And so that's where the kind of book has come from working with clients and thinking, actually, this could be a tool for clients, but also for those that perhaps aren't my clients, perhaps yet, that this book might be helpful to them. And of course, if they find it helpful, they may want to then do some further work with me. So that's kind of where that book has come from and kind of what it is all about.
Fantastic. And I believe that you had a launch party last night. I'm
Yes.
sure people are going to be interested to know what goes on behind the scenes at a launch party.
Well, yeah, and interestingly, it's the first book launch I've ever been to, and it was my own. So to a certain extent, I could kind of shape, what do I want the launch to be? What goes behind the scenes? Well, a lot of prep in terms of thinking, how do I want this to be? And if I'm going to have people there, what do I provide them with? So we had bubbles and brownies. Kind of Prosecco and non-alcoholic Prosecco, and brownies, just to make people feel, oh, this is nice. But because the book was based, so the principle of the book everyday alchemy, it's looking at everyday people as well that do it. So the way I've structured the book has a fictional ancient alchemist, has a modern day fictional alchemist, and has real life people that demonstrate it. So I'd invited everyone that was in the book. Not everyone could come because it was holiday time, but I had a number who were there. And so at the book launch, I interviewed some of them as part of that to tell story. And it was interesting. Some of the people present said, oh, it's really interesting hearing the stories from the people within the book. So again, we know the power of story that can have. So yeah, the book launch, invite people along that you think have, great connection to you, but also might be able to share the story of your book. In my case, because there were people in the book, I invited some of them and interviewed them. And I think book launch has great power, actually, because what you're doing is bringing your contacts in. And I was once told, don't be afraid to unashamedly milk your contacts in terms of invite them in, ask them to help you, ask them to share about the book, tell the story, share the photos, those sorts of things. And so we had lots of people there. Had a book signing, which felt a little bit uncomfortable for me because that felt a little bit, I'm making myself a bit big. But actually, most people, wanted a signed copy. I was there at the launch, and so I tried to write a little message, reasonably personal to those who'd been there. So. Yeah, never been to a book launch, and this was my first one. So if any of our listeners think, I'll have a launch, just shape it the way you want it to be, and depending on the style of your book as well, and just talk a bit about your book. I actually read a little bit from my book as well. So as I said, there's an ancient alchemist, because the idea is to use that as a metaphor, as a parallel story. And so, years of being in education and reading stories to children, I just adapted it for grown-ups and put on the alchemist voice as I read that bit of the story, and again, engage people. And and if you want to find out more, buy the book. So little teasers like that. So had a launch, and any of our listeners, it's a good idea if you write your book, have a little launch.
Sounds like a lot of fun. So
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, did enjoy it. Quite tired afterwards, but definitely worth it. And then people have already started talking about the book and posting a few things online. All of that just gets a little bit of traction about the book for people to hear the message that you've got to share. That's the ultimate thing. There's something in my book that I think is going to be helpful to people. So get people to help you share it.
Absolutely. Now, this is your second book. So let's go back to when you first started writing this one. What was your process?
So the process for this book, basically there's an idea that sparks, and it was a case of, there's something here. There's something I'm picking up. As coaches, we're encouraged to be curious, and so you're listening to a whole series of stories, and in my mind there was just, hang on, there's a pattern here. There's lots of people, and at the core of this sits this same principle. And so it started by just noting and a sense of, maybe there's something in here for a book. Maybe there's something that could help wider than my clients. If this number of people are having this similar issue, then it comes back to that thing around, if people are falling in the river, we need to not just pull them out the river. We need to be looking further down what could be causing this. And what I sense was, what's causing this is somewhere in people's life they're being taught about, we must do really well in a moment, and it's causing too much pressure. So there was a spark that there's something here, this theory could be useful. And so it's just a case of noting that. And then what I like to work anyway around making things simple, keeping things, if I can, less than 5, in 3s if you can. I always joke with people, I like to alliterate, or I like to make sure things rhyme or simple or easy. So as I'm working with clients, I was just noting, pausing, reflecting, and then responding is really key for a number of these. So I just made a note of that. And then I was like, hang on, when we're looking back, what I'm doing is revisiting, reviewing, reframing, rebuilding. And so there's a really simple peg to hang off. So again, just kind of noted that. And then I think it's from my own reading. Some of the leadership books I love to read is like Patrick Lencioni's works. They're all a story. And so then there was a note of, oh, I wonder if I put story into this, would story help people? So my method was almost just, I literally had like a Word document. I was just making a few notes of these things, just jotting it down. And then there's this little spark mixed with, oh, I seem to have a few hours. Maybe I'll just write some, and you just write and you just plonk something on the page. And at that stage, it's rough, it's clunky, but probably the important thing is just to write it. It doesn't matter that it's not perfect. You're just putting it in. And in fact, if I went back to my original stuff and compared it to the final book, it is actually quite different. And then there comes these few moments of, oh, and you almost feel the book calling you. Do you want to come and do a bit more work with me? It's almost, do you want to come out and play? And so you then go back to that document and you add a few bits. And then there's a little spark to the story. In case of mine, my fictional alchemist, everyday alchemist, was a young lady called Belinda who's struggling. Oh, yeah, she's struggling. What's she struggling with? Well, a lot of my clients seem to struggle with somebody at work that they're trying to work with. Well, yeah, maybe that's a good line. So now I have this name, and I try and choose a name that I don't come across very often, which is Belinda. So if you're listening to this and you're called Belinda, apologies, it is purely fictional. And so then Belinda has, and then so what name is the person? Well, let's choose a random name I've never come across. Richmond. Belinda's having trouble with Richmond, and then I look at the concept. Well, what if rather than Patrick Lencioni's work, which is the 2/3, 3/4 of the book is a story, what if I was to break this story up in each chapter? That would be different and would follow a theme. And what if I was to, well, hang on, what? And then a title starts to come together. In my case, well, this is, the ancient alchemist turned metals into gold. Well, everyday alchemy, and it fitted my theme of my company, Everyday, with this principle of everyday alchemy. So this isn't about wizardry, and we had to make it really clear on the book title as well. This isn't about wizardry, and it's not transforming trash to treasure. It's not some kind of workshop where you turn your old chair into something really new. No, this is about life stuff. So what happens is it just kind of begins to form. You keep popping back to it, and then for me, it started to build a bit of a structure. And then there was a thought, well, what if I had an ancient alchemist then that I told a bit of a story at the start of every chapter, and there was this key word or key phrase that he would say, or a key theme that then could shape each chapter of the book. And so that's how it almost calls you then, and then it gains momentum. And then you find you desire to spend time with it because actually I've got a structure now, and I think I'm going to go and write a chapter. And then before you know it, you've written 5, 6 chapters. And then it's gained real momentum, and then you're like, I need to finish this now, and so you keep writing. And then in one sense, the tough bit comes back, that every time you go back to it, for me, I would reread. If I was on chapter 6, I would reread chapter 1 to 5, so it built flow. And in my case, my chapters weren't particularly long, so it was okay. But that's kind of how I then got the flow to it, and then you sort of finish it. And then you go back and reread it yourself. And so that's kind of how it sort of journeyed for me. And I guess for everybody it's different. But it was a similar theme with my first book as well. You just have this idea, and then it shapes, and you build it from there.
And I believe you had 2 different publishing experiences between book 1 and book 2. Can you tell us a bit more about those?
Yeah, so when I wrote book 1, it was right at relatively early on in the start of the company, and I thought what started that spark really was actually having a book might give me some credibility, and I think particularly for me. So my story, which I actually tell in both books, is my journey as a head teacher ended not quite the way I wanted to. I'd actually resigned to leave. Gave 10 months notice, and I'd resigned in order to set up Everyday Leader. But before I had chance to leave, we had an Ofsted inspection that went wrong. There was missing reference paperwork. The Academy Trust following that just said, if you turn up tomorrow, we're going to do this, this and this, or you could just go. So I was asked to leave. It was a really unpleasant kind of ending to 17 years of being a head teacher. And part of me was going, This isn't a great start to running a leadership coaching and training business, having an Ofsted that's not gone very well. So part of me was like, well, maybe if I write a book that might help re-establish some of my credentials. It was also for me partly to sort of really solidify my thinking. What is leadership? And so that book was called Everyday People, Everyday Leaders, and that was formed around looking at a number of everyday people who demonstrated leadership skills, telling their story, and then explaining the leadership principles that someone could take. So that was the first book. And at that point, I kind of didn't really know, well, how do I publish this? So I approached like an educational publisher that I'd seen quite a bit of. They weren't interested, and I've since found out if you don't particularly have a massive social following, sometimes it's hard to get a proper publisher to do it. So I thought, well, I'll self-publish, and the first one I went with Amazon. And the good thing about that is that you retain all the control of your book. The kind of tougher parts of it is you do all the work. So you get the template, you use the template to fill all that in. Now, I think wisely still got that edited. So I then paid a professional editor to edit it. And I would say that is really important. I know of a friend who's written a book, and they got a friend to edit it, who had some editing skills, but she is now finding some of the spelling mistakes or, those errors in it and having to then re-edit those. So I would still say I still do as I do, which was to get that professionally edited. But you then have to do all the work. So you have to sort the cover, or you have to pay someone to sort the cover, but you do all that work and then you upload it. And so it was fine. It worked well in so many ways, but also just doing it through Amazon means it just gets sold through Amazon. And what I noted is it wasn't necessarily getting the kind of wider traction I wanted, or some people would say, oh, I want to buy it from my local bookshop. And of course they couldn't because it was only through Amazon. Some for sort of their own kind of personal reasons don't want to use Amazon and they wanted to use a local bookstore. And so I found that was, for me, in the way I'd done the first one, I thought, actually, when I wrote the second one, I need to do that differently. So by then I'd found a really good self-publishing publisher, which seems a bit sort of wrong. And I'm sure, Helen, you'll probably tell me the technical name in a moment for what they are. But effectively, Softwood Books, they're based local to me in Stowmarket. And I was able to then go to them and say, well, this is my book. And they still allow all that kind of control as an author, but they do all the work for you. So they've got an editor. They'll then say, well, what book cover would you like? Here are your sort of price choices. And that retains, so much more, where they do all that work for you and support you. So for me, I found the second one kind of much easier. It didn't actually cost me a lot more in terms of getting the book done, but it gave me some of that kind of control element back as well.
Fantastic. Sounds like sort of more of a partnership publisher from what you're saying. Right. So they coordinate all of the publishing team. So you're like you say, your cover designer and all of that sort of thing. Yeah. But then you get to decide on the final version before they publish. Absolutely. Sort of
And then they do all that stuff of putting it out to the kind of book hubs that send it through, and then it goes to all booksellers, and so in fact, and not just in this country either. So a friend of mine's just moved to America, and she sent me a picture of my book in her hand, ironically, before, I don't know quite how this happened, before the release date, and before I'd actually had a copy in my hand. She had it in a copy in her hand in America. So not sure what happened there, but it certainly was great that it didn't just stick to one country either, was kind of going worldwide. But yeah, that I would say, if you're, for our listeners, just explore those two ways of doing things. And certainly for me, Softwood have been great. They've been really supportive. You don't feel you're alone in it. They take some of the stress and some of the worry out of it. It cost me perhaps a tiny bit more in comparison, because obviously I did use a professional editor as part of that.
Yeah. And that's always the trade-off, isn't it, with all of these things? It's you can spend more money on something, or you can spend more time on something. And when it comes to publishing, it's ensuring that you're making the right choice for you for that particular book. And so what I really like is that you've had one experience with one book that was fit for purpose for that moment in time and for that experience. And then you've got a different experience because actually you've had different desired outcomes and different requirements. So that's really useful for people to hear, that you don't need to be tied in one way or the other.
No, that's right. I think probably what I would advise for whichever route you take is to still get it professionally edited, because as coaches, we stand on the quality of our work, don't we? And so however good we are at writing, and I would say I'm reasonably good at spelling, punctuation and grammar, having been a head teacher for 17 years. But you still, when you're writing, stuff comes out, and when you reread it, you're reading it because your brain's making sense of it. To have somebody professionally looking at that means you put out the quality that you want to stand for.
And you get so close to it, don't you? I mean, you've just explained how you reread from the beginning every time you sort of sat down to write again. So by the time you finish the book, you've probably read chapter 1, let's say 20 times for the sake of argument. You're just not going to notice because you're so used to seeing those words. And as you say, having fresh eyes and someone that's professionally trained to do that is such an important step in the process, regardless of what publishing route you take. I couldn't agree more. So what people always ask about the tools and technology. So what tools did you use to help you with the process?
Well, I'm probably really basic in some ways, that I just literally used a Word document for recording mine. And if I had any ideas, if I was out and about, I just used the note section of my phone, obviously then synchronized. It's just literally notes on the phone if I was out and about and a thought came to mind, so that when I came back to sitting down on the laptop for it, it was there. So mine was relatively simple. There may well be loads of great other tools out there, but mine was really simple.
And that's so important too. We can overcomplicate things, can't we? It's like when we're working with clients in coaching and they're sort of coming up with these amazing ideas of things to do. And actually, sometimes it is just the simplest thing to help get rid of all of that noise. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
What did you learn during the whole experience that surprised you?
Well, I think, I don't know if it surprised me, because having done the first book, I think it sort of reiterated, it helps you just solidify your own thinking and clarify your own thinking. So I think as you're writing, it clarifies it for you. So I think that's the key thing that I learned. So actually writing, well, I talk about this a bit in the book. So there's one of the characters in the book is a lady called Jane, who's an artist, and in talking to her, as an artist, she has a painting, an end product. But as an artist, she isn't just producing the end product, the painting. She's also saying, what am I learning from you? What are you teaching me as I paint? So she almost sees the painting as a partner to develop her art. So she'll learn new skills as she does it, that she then carries forward into the next painting. So I think it's the same, because writing a book is a form of art, that you're writing a book and there is an end product to the book, but there is a sense of what are you teaching me as the writer, as well as hopefully what you're teaching the readers. So I think it clarified, it solidified my thinking around, yes, how do I manage myself, but also how do I help clients in terms of if they're facing moments, how they make the best from them, how they regain control when they perhaps think they're not in control, helping them discover that. And it just clarified those simple steps. So I think that's what I learned, is it clarifies things for me. What surprised me, I think, is, well, I would say, again, hopefully this will help your listeners. So if I had to quantify myself, I would say I was a mathematician rather than a writer. So okay. My early training was double maths and physics at A level, which would turn most people cold. But I would say I was more of a mathematician, and in terms of writing, has always been harder work. So what did I learn? What did surprise me is I think I can write quite reasonably. I think my reading helps that as well. So the more we read, I think, as people and as coaches, that helps. We'll pick up subliminally kind of techniques and things that are used. So I think what surprised me is I think I've got quite a nice sort of structure and technique in terms of, a fictional ancient person, a fictional modern person, and then these real life characters, and obviously weaving all of that together was explaining the principles. So what surprised me is I think I'm actually quite good at explaining things. I think I'm quite good at structuring a book that's a little bit different. So yeah, that bit may be a surprise, but certainly the first and the second book is it helps you also clarify and solidify your thinking, which in turn I think then helps us as coaches when we're working with our clients, because when someone's coming to us, we've got some really clear principles of what might be helpful as we really work from our client's position. We kind of know what does help you if you're struggling with a moment, because you've worked that through, in my case, in the book.
Yeah, 100%. And just spending that extra time with something, isn't it? It's the process of the identification of the concept, potentially the research around the concept, the reflection around the concept, and then articulating the concept just as a process. Even if somebody wasn't thinking of publishing a book, by going through those steps can really help your own personal development. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So obviously with the launch day less than 24 hours ago, how else are you going to get this book into the hand of readers?
Yeah, so I think that's a thing I've tried to learn from the first book, because I don't think I did enough with the first book. So this one, there's a clear thing around, let's have a launch. Let's pull in contacts. So we tend to think, oh, well, I shouldn't ask contacts, but I think we should. And contacts don't mind, because actually if you've got something of value to share, then they'll want to share it too. And this is all kind of pay it forward moments. So they're going to do something for you, but you've already perhaps done something either for them or for others anyway. So have a launch. That's one thing I've done. Talk to contacts, ask them, and give them the tools then to do it. Look, here's you've been at the launch. Here are some pictures, share them, or you take pictures, share them. Here's my social media connections, so you've got them clearly. Can you tag me in so that we can get that movement going? Having a bit of a program for how you share that. Now, what I've done with this book, I did a similar thing with the first one, is I've done a series of videos to go with it, just explaining it. In this second book, I got a good friend of mine, Anna, to interview me over a series of videos about the book, which we've put out as well. Because ultimately, for me, it's about getting the message out. Now, hopefully that will signpost people back to the book. But if they don't, and they just listen to the videos that we put out and the podcasts that we put out on it, then they're still getting the message. So for me, it was about, and they don't need to be huge videos. If you're thinking, oh, I'm not a great video person, they don't need to be flashy. It's just a little bit about the video where you talk a bit about it, signpost it. For me, it's going to be about using social media, having a bit of a plan on releasing that regularly, little snippets about it, sharing bits about the book. So for me, again, on a couple of occasions, what I've started to do is read a little bit from it, give people a little snippet, so that they want to hear a little more. And obviously with mine, because I've got a series of stories in it, story can be quite powerful. So people go, oh, I found Belinda really interesting. Maybe I'll get the book to hear the rest of the bits about Belinda. So yeah, telling bits about it, that's really important. A plan also maybe to do a little bit about this is how it came about, giving a few examples of some early bits. Look, here's the draft manuscript, but here's the final book. Little pictures like that, so people can see the journey, the authentic journey that you've been on. Another bit is chatting to people on podcasts. So getting onto other podcasts, talking about the work that you're doing, the book, that just gets word out as well. I've also got a press release that I'm going to send out to local press. Local press are often quite busy, so they won't necessarily come to the launch. But then if you send them stuff after, some pictures, some quotes, some information about the book, how it's come about, what's the core bit of it, then again, a lot of local media will want to use that because they want to fill their pages, but they haven't necessarily got the people to come out and find about it. So giving a little simple press release with info, that's going to be part of the process for me. There may well be, a few like paid ads or something on Facebook just to get a bit traction. But most of it, I'm planning to start through local networks and just putting myself out, talking a bit about it. And the other bit I've got plans for today actually, is just put a newsletter out to all of my connections, again, who they will be interested. They're people that have worked with me. And again, what you're encouraging them to do is, hopefully this is useful for you, but maybe it's useful for some of your friends. Do pass it on. And it's just that getting traction by talking to the people that are interested in your work. They're your advocates, then that's important. And I guess the other bit I'd encourage people to think about, because it's something I'm going to try and do, Seth Godin in his work talks about find your sneezers. So those are the people that are so infectious that they sneeze everywhere. The people that really love the work that you do and are passionate about what you do, really try and get them to do some of that work for you. Get them sneezing metaphorically everywhere they go, telling about your work, about the book. It's tapping into those people who are passionate about what you do. Perhaps particularly those clients that you've really affected, encouraging them. So a couple of people who are in my book have really been affected positively, I hasten to add, by my coaching work. And so therefore, they are already kind of talking about the book and sharing it. And so that's what I plan to do. Hopefully that might be useful for people listening in as well.
Fantastic. That's brilliant, Colin. And the last question, the one that everyone always asks you as soon as you've published a book, are you going to write another one?
Well, yes. So it's interesting, at the book launch, Oliver, who was host of the company where we launched it from, which was it was an antiques auction house. It was a very unusual place to do it. He said to me, he said, well, I've learnt a bit from our launch because actually we should have it there, and there. And so if we would do another launch, we'd do that. So when you write your next book, he said, this is how we'll set the room up. And I said, you need to go and tell my wife then. And he said, so when we do the next one, and she laughed nervously because she does sometimes say she was a bit of a book widow. So anyway, long answer to your short question. Will there be a third book? I didn't know there was going to be a second book. I think it's a sense of, if an idea germinates, then yes, there'll be a third book. And again, I think as coaches / authors, that we shouldn't put ourselves under the pressure that I must write a third. But I think there's a thing, if something is of value and I'm detecting there's a seed here that could germinate, then I would do exactly the same thing, sort of start to jot it down. And yeah, this book took 2 years to write, not 2 years solid, but because you start that little top up and that little germination, and then it comes to fruition later. So really long answer to your short question. There could be a third book. Who knows? I'm certainly open to it. My wife might take some persuading, but let's just see what germinates.
We'll definitely watch this space.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Colin. This has been absolutely fantastic. Lots of inspiration in there for people that are on their writer's journey. Let's finish by, if you can tell listeners where they can find you, your services, and most importantly, your books online.
Yeah, so I can be found relatively easily, everydayleader.co.uk. Lots of links then on to various things, social media wise. I'm just on LinkedIn. If you were to look for Everyday Leader or just look for Colin Tapscott, there's not many Colin Tapscotts around, so you'll find me linked that way, but also there's links to that on our website. And in terms of the book, if people are interested, it's on Amazon. And again, just type in Everyday Alchemy, Transforming Your Trash into Treasure, and that will come up on Amazon, Waterstones, any other bookshop. You'll be able to find that one. And the first book is obviously just on Amazon. That's Everyday People, Everyday Leaders. Hopefully you'll find that one too.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Colin. That was absolutely fantastic.
Oh, it's been lovely to join you, Helen, and thank you for having me on the podcast.
I hope you found today's interview with Colin as fascinating as I did. I particularly liked how he weaved story through his book. You can share your reflections by leaving a comment on the podcast show notes or on the YouTube channel, or email me at helen@coachright.co.uk. Next week, I'm joined by Viv Chitty, talking all about her book, Coaching for Optimal Energy. I look forward to bringing you the next chapter. Thank you for joining me today. You can get the show notes and your free guide to publishing options at coachright.co.uk. Remember to subscribe and leave a review on your podcatcher of choice. Your words can make a difference. A review can too. If you'd like to connect, find me on LinkedIn, O'Neill Helen, that's O'Neill, Oneill, or on Instagram at Helen O'Neill Coaching. I'll see you for the next chapter of Coach Right.